But look, what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this. And as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it. But we're not going to let this go, because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away with it.
You let them in.
President, open your
You let them in and you knew what they were.
Right.
So you are complicit. I want to make a quick clarification about the neo at the Turning Point event. They were outside protesters. My point was more metaphorical, that you embraced them at your thing, I felt.
But Whoopi is certainly not the brightest person. And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say. It's not a well thought out. It's like if you had an idea for a premise and it was totally baked and half baked and you went on stage with it and it's nothing
Just
there.
go for it.
It started with a line on The View that exploded like a firework in a gas station. One moment, Whoopi Goldberg was casually talking politics, and the next boom, she had dragged 5,000 young people into a scandal they had nothing to do with.
Welcome back. You know, in Monday's conversation about Turning Point USA, I put the young people at the conference in the same category as the protesters outside. And I don't like it when people make assumptions about me. And it's not any better when I make assumptions about other people, which I did. So, my bad. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So, the state, the U.S.
On national television, she lumped high school and college students who attended a Turning Point USA event together with extremist protesters who were outside the venue. No evidence, no clarification. Just a careless comparison that painted every single student as dangerous. And just like that, she ignited a firestorm. The backlash was instant. Parents, students, and conservative voices came out swinging. The organization behind the event didn't just clap back with angry tweets, they threatened a full-blown lawsuit. And they weren't bluffing. They called in top legal teams, the kind that don't flinch unless there's serious ground to stand on. This wasn't just about a TV comment anymore. It turned into a war over defamation, reputation, and whether the mainstream media can smear everyday people and walk away without consequences.
Charlie Kirk's the founder and CEO of Turning Point USA and the author of the new book, The College Scam. So, Charlie, do you accept the View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here. They went after our 5,000 students at our event there, of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time. People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country that then have to live for the rest of their life with a shadow over them because someone at ABC says that they might be linked to
And let's be clear, these weren't celebrities or politicians she was talking about. These were teens, 17-year-olds. Some had flown across the country with their parents just to hear speakers talk about politics. And now their names were linked to extremist groups on national TV. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more intriguing stories. Now let's continue.
The culture shift between right and left authoritarianism, and now people don't recognize that if you just stopped looking at it in terms of red and blue, look at the actions, whether it's war, suppression of free speech, pharmacological interventions that are mandatory, right. whatever it is, that used to all be associated with the authoritative right, the authoritarian right, and now those things are being embraced by the left. And I just think it's just an ideology thing, and I think we get confused and we think we're on the right side, we're on the right side. And if it's our side that's saying this, for sure that's the right thing to do. And no one's critically thinking about this.
Joe Rogan is the gateway drug for young men that thought they were Democrats to become MAGA. Joe Rogan is the bridge. And on that bridge, they'll see RFK. They'll see Elon Musk.
Because what happened next turned a daytime TV jab into a full-on media brawl. So, after the outrage started building, Whoopi did what most TV personalities try to do when cornered. She gave an apology. But let's not pretend it was some heartfelt, teary-eyed moment. She basically said she didn't like when people made assumptions about her, so she shouldn't have made assumptions about others. That was it. No personal accountability. No direct apology to the students she smeared, just a quick, "my bad," and move on.
The reason they felt they needed to do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive, that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers, maybe the audience of The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit this last weekend.
Yeah, they have nothing else to talk about. Maybe.
And that didn't sit well with anyone. Not the students, not the parents, and definitely not Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point USA. To him, this wasn't just a bad take it was a public attack on thousands of young people. And if you know Charlie, you know he doesn't just let things slide. He went on air, fired up, asking one question. Would you be okay if your 17-year-old daughter got painted as a neo-Nazi on national television for going to a student event? He pointed out how these weren't public figures. These were regular kids who now have to live with the weight of that false label. Imagine applying to college or jobs and having that pop up when someone Googles your name. Charlie made it clear this wasn't about whether he accepted Whoopi's apology. The bigger question was, do the students accept it? Because they were the ones who got dragged through the mud. Whoopi's apology wasn't enough, not even close. And just when you thought things were already messy, Joe Rogan stepped into the picture, and that's when it all really exploded. Joe Rogan didn't need a TV stage or a morning talk show to make his point. Had something much more powerful. A massive platform, millions of listeners.
Show is that show has this very specific ideological bubble in which they operate in, you know, and they always bring on a token conservative woman and they yell over her and silence her, and you know they did that with Meghan McCain, and they did that with the what is that other blonde woman from Survivor? Do you remember her, Jamie? She was always yelling. I mean, it's just it's a bizarre show.
And a reputation for tearing apart bad arguments like tissue paper in a thunderstorm. When he heard what Whoopi said, he didn't tiptoe around it. He compared her logic to someone trying to explain quantum physics while wearing oven mitts. And honestly, that's exactly how it sounded: awkward, sloppy, and full of holes. Rogan took her comments and broke them down piece by piece, not with fancy words or political spin, but with brutal common sense. He said what a lot of people were thinking but didn't know how to put into words. Why is it okay to smear a huge group of kids just because they attended a conservative event? Why is there no outrage when false accusations come from daytime hosts who claim to be about love, truth, and compassion? And Joe didn't stop there. He called out how the media avoids telling the real story. He pointed out that The View didn't want their audience to know the truth, that thousands of young people chose to spend their summer weekend traveling across the country to hear conservative speakers. That didn't fit the narrative. So instead, they tried to discredit the whole event by slapping a dangerous label on it. Joe's takedown wasn't just a reaction, it was a full-on reality check.
So I hate the whole thing. And frankly, that show, you want to talk about a show that set women back, is The View. You want to talk about that show, if the CIA is engineering, Antifa and fucking the Capitol riot, some crazy misogynist engineered The View, because there's nothing worse than The View. In terms of there are so many brilliant women out there. None of them are on The View. None of them have gone near the set of The View. I mean, they have brought in the lowest tier of the, what is it, the Y chromosome?
No, double
the
X.
Okay.
Double X.
They brought in the lowest of the double X's for that one.
And the internet? Oh, it ate it up. But while Joe was methodically tearing down the argument, Charlie Kirk was about to launch a whole different kind of attack, faster, louder, and way more personal. While Joe Rogan was calmly slicing Whoopi's argument apart like a skilled butcher, Charlie Kirk came in like a wrecking ball, no filters, no soft landings. If Joe was the slow burn, Charlie was the explosion. He didn't just say Whoopi was wrong, he said she represented everything wrong with the media elite, and he wasn't holding back. Charlie mocked The View for pretending to be inclusive while constantly silencing any real conservative voices.
Her disgusting, gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. Sunny Hostin goes on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump, uneducated white women.
Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever they teach. But I said this to our team. I said working people, the muscular class, including working women, they are so in favor of Trump, and they don't want to be called stupid or uneducated.
He brought up how they treated former co-hosts like Meghan McCain, constantly interrupting, shutting them down, and turning debates into dog piles. And then he dug deeper. He didn't just criticize the show's content the tour into the whole structure, calling it a bubble of groupthink where any dissenting opinion gets crushed before it can even breathe. And Whoopi? To Charlie, she wasn't just another host. She was the face of that media hypocrisy, someone who sits in a high chair of influence, looking down on working-class Americans while hiding behind a polished Hollywood smile. He said the way she handled the Turning Point USA comment showed a complete disconnect from regular people. And then, in pure Kirk fashion, he cranked it up another level. He called the show a disaster for women.
You're worried about losing your job, and you're worried about podcasts taking over, and who's the source of news, and we said Donald Trump was Hitler, but half the country disagreed with us, and he won, and this is and Joe Rogan believes in dragons. Do you see what Whoopi Goldberg said?
What'd she say?
Whoopi Goldberg said that Biden could arrest all the Republicans and put them in jail. You just need to see how unhinged this kind of thinking is. Well, you know what Joe Biden could do? Joe Biden, you have to see it, because it's so
on TV.
crazy.
She said it's
on television.
Not because women shouldn't be on TV, but because The View, in his words, dragged down intelligent female commentary by pushing emotional outbursts over real arguments. He said if someone wanted to design a show to make smart women look ridiculous, it would look exactly like The View. And just like that, Whoopi wasn't just in hot water, she was the centerpiece of a full-blown cultural roast. And the flames were only getting hotter. Now, here's the twist that made the whole situation even more insane. Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk never even appeared together. There was no shared podcast, no split-screen debate, no stage showdown.
I don't want to say too much, but we're going to have a lot of fun at the Department of Education. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Can I tell you something? Like, I've had quite a few people contact me about that particular post. Like, I'm sure I have 1/100th of what you're getting, but people are contacting me about cabinet posts. I'm like, I got
look,
nothing.
I mean, yeah, I'm actually, after this conversation, heading to Mar-a-Lago for a week, and we have a lot to sift through, and if I could be helpful, I have asked. I want to be actively involved in all things education, as you can imagine.
It was like two missiles launched from opposite sides of the country, aimed at the same target, Whoopi Goldberg. Rogan fired with logic, Kirk fired with rage, but both hit hard and dismantled her arguments. The other shredded her public image. And the effect? It was like watching a heavyweight boxer take a clean hit from both sides. Whoopi wasn't just criticized, she was crushed, her credibility wobbling like a toddler on roller skates. And it wasn't just their words. The internet made it 10 times worse. Within hours, memes started flying.
Well, it is the show that people love to hate.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
They get so much hate watching viral clips of them saying ridiculous things. I mean, it is a rabies-infested henhouse.
Clips from The View were re-edited, spliced, and turned into viral punchlines. Hashtags exploded. Whoopi went from respected host to trending joke in what felt like minutes. But the worst part? It didn't stop there. Because now it wasn't just about her comment. It became about who she was, what she stood for, and how out of touch she seemed. In the media world, that's the real danger when people stop talking about what you said and start questioning you. And Whoopi? She went quiet. No follow-up, no clarification, no fight back, just silence. And in today's world, silence doesn't mean peace, it means you're cornered. And the wolves are circling. As the internet kept roasting Whoopi, the hits just kept coming. Commentators, comedians, and even random Twitter accounts piled on. But this wasn't just about some clumsy TV remark anymore, it turned into a full-on symbol of how badly the culture war has twisted public conversations. Joe Rogan wasn't done. He took it a step further and called out something deeper: the shift happening in American politics. He pointed out that things like censorship, forced medical decisions, and endless war stuff once tied to the authoritarian right were now being embraced by the left. He accused people like Whoopi of blindly defending their side without thinking critically. To him, it didn't matter if it was red or blue bad, ideas are bad ideas. And he didn't sugarcoat it. He said Whoopi's kind of thinking was exactly what pushes young men who once thought they were Democrats to start listening to guys like him and end up on the MAGA train. According to him, he is the bridge between confused liberals and full-on political rebels. And that bridge? It leads straight through podcasts into conversations with Elon Musk, RFK Jr., and beyond. That's what made Rogan's role so powerful in this whole mess. He wasn't just throwing shoddy, was flipping the entire narrative. He turned Whoopi's attack into a rallying cry for people who are tired of what he calls elitist nonsense. And once again, he didn't need to yell to do it. He just let the facts speak, and people listened. Loudly. While Rogan was calmly flipping the chessboard, Charlie Kirk came back swinging faster, louder, and meaner. He said Whoopi and The View didn't just lie, they did it because the truth was too inconvenient. According to him, they couldn't admit that 5,000 kids paid for flights, hotels, and tickets during one of the most expensive travel seasons just to spend a weekend listening to conservative speakers. Why? Because if their audience knew that, they might start questioning what they believe. They might realize that young people aren't just brainwashed left-wing activists, but that some are actively searching for different perspectives. That's the part the show didn't want to touch. Charlie said the smear wasn't an accident. It was strategy, a desperate one. And then Joe Rogan stepped right back into it, comparing Whoopi's argument to someone trying to solve a math problem while blindfolded and spinning in a chair. He mocked how sloppy it all sounded. His takedown wasn't some emotional rant, it was surgical. He picked apart her assumptions one by one, not just calling them dumb, but proving they made zero sense. He didn't just win an argument, showed her logic was built like a house of cards in a wind tunnel. And then he dropped the hammer. This wasn't just about politics, it was about credibility. And when you lose that, no apology in the world can save you. Especially when the internet's watching and replaying your words on loop. Now, while Rogan was breaking things down with calm precision, Charlie Kirk turned the volume all the way up. He wasn't interested in subtle jabs, she went for full-on body blows. To him, The View wasn't just biased, it was a joke. A scripted circus that brought in token conservatives only to humiliate them on live TV. He called it out. Every time they bring in a woman with right-leaning views, they talk over her, shout her down, and make her look ridiculous. He dragged up examples Meghan McCain constantly cut off, other conservative guests barely allowed to finish a sentence. And then he took aim at Whoopi again. Charlie mocked her as the ultimate symbol of Hollywood elitism, someone who sits on a plush stage pretending to represent women while spitting on the voices of working-class Americans. His words were sharp, mocking, and designed to sting. He didn't just disagree, he ridiculed everything she stood for. He even joked that if someone wanted to invent a show to set women back 50 years, The View would be it. And then came his lowest punch, said the show had dragged in the lowest tier of women to represent the double X chromosome, that it was a collection of loud voices, not intelligent ones. The insult was brutal. Over the top? Maybe, but it landed, and people noticed. Online, it was a feeding frenzy. Screenshots, quotes, and savage edits were flying across social media. Suddenly, Whoopi wasn't just a host. Any Moresh was the target. And the crowd wasn't done yet. The wildest part? Whoopi said nothing. No follow-up, no defense. Not even a casual remark to lighten the tension. Just silence. And in the chaos of online media, that silence sounded deafening. People were waiting for a response, a comeback, something, but it never came. And that made it worse. When someone who's been in the spotlight for decades suddenly goes quiet after being called out so publicly, it doesn't feel like control, it feels like defeat. Memes kept spreading. Clips from Rogan and Kirk were everywhere. Edits with fire emojis, clown music, reaction videos. Even some of Whoopi's own fans couldn't defend her. You know it's bad when the internet starts wondering if you're the punchline instead of the voice of reason. And the real burn? This wasn't a meltdown with crying and yelling. There were no tissue boxes or table slams. What people called a breakdown was quieter shifts in her tone, less snap in her voice, more caution in her words. Like someone who just realized they walked into a fight without armor. You could see either confidence cracked. The usual sharp, witty comebacks weren't landing. It was like watching a stand-up comedian forget the punchline halfway through. She wasn't breaking down in the dramatic TV movie way. It was more like a slow leak-on that even the studio lights couldn't hide. And once the crack shows, the whole wall starts to crumble. That crack in Whoopi's armor didn't go unnoticed, not for a second. Media analysts pounced on it, turning her hesitation into headlines. This wasn't just gossip anymore, it became a case study. Articles popped up asking how someone with decades of media experience could get steamrolled so easily by two voices from completely different worlds. Some called it the pressure of modern commentary. Others said it exposed how fragile mainstream credibility really is. But for fans, it split the room. Some felt sympathy, saying she was being unfairly targeted in a brutal culture war. But a lot of others? They were loving it. Grabbing popcorn, making reaction videos, laughing at the mighty falling in real time. And all of it was fueled by just a few seconds of doubt in Whoopi's voice. That hesitation? That pause? It flipped the story. Suddenly, she wasn't the unshakable TV queen anymore. She was just another person caught off guard, overwhelmed, and outgunned. That's the power shift. In this new media world, even the tiniest misstep is replayed, clipped, shared, turned into a meme and used as proof that someone's done. And that's exactly what started happening. People began saying, maybe it was time for her to step back. Maybe the media landscape had changed too much. Maybe she wasn't ready for the level of fire coming from all sides. Because once the audience smells blood, it's game on. And Whoopi? She was bleeding credibility. But this wasn't just about Whoopi getting dragged online. This was something bigger, way bigger. Her silence, her stumble, her hesitation. It turned into a symbol of how the game has changed. This wasn't just a feud between a talk show host, a podcaster, and a political fire starter. It became a full-blown cultural battle. Rogan and Kirk didn't just challenge her, they exposed something deeper. The battlefield has shifted. It's not polished TV debates anymore. It's digital war zones. YouTube clips, TikTok reactions, podcast takedowns, that's where real influence lives now. And Whoopi walked into it like it was still 2002. Joe Rogan represents this skeptical, dig deep, challenge everything kind of media. He doesn't trust surface-level headlines, and neither do his millions of followers. He's not just reacting, he's shaping opinion. And Charlie Kirk? He's the guy throwing verbal grenades at the establishment, rallying a base that's hungry for blunt truth, even when it sounds outrageous. Together, without even teaming up, they hit Whoopi from both sides. Rogan's calm dissection made her look uninformed. Kirk's fiery insults made her look fake. It wasn't just about what she said, it became a warning for anyone in media. If you're not ready, stay out of the ring. Because now, one wrong sentence can cost you years of reputation, and Whoopi's stumble proved it. Not by collapsing into tears, but by showing just how fast confidence can collapse under pressure. And the scariest part? Nobody's immune anymore. As things kept spiraling, the spotlight on Whoopi turned brutal. Every word she'd said was now frozen in clips, stitched into TikToks, echoed in podcasts. But the real gut punch wasn't the outrage, it was how fast her decades-long career got overshadowed by a few minutes of bad judgment. And she didn't even fight back. No fiery rebuttal, no round 2 rant, just silence. While that might have seemed like a strategy, in the age of viral takedowns, silence is blood in the water. Especially when the sharks Rogan and Kirk were still circling, and the internet wasn't letting up. Joe kept drilling into her arguments, breaking them down in his usual blunt style. He didn't just say she was wrong, he showed how her points fell apart under basic logic. He was methodical, calm, like a scientist exposing the cracks in her thinking. Every clip of him doing that went viral, shared like gospel by people sick of celebrity elitism. Charlie, on the other hand, didn't slow down either. He mocked the arrogance of hosts like Whoopi who preached to the rest of the country while living in a completely different world. And he wasn't shy about who he was fighting for. He said it out loud: working people, what he called the muscular class. The ones who get labeled uneducated just because they didn't go to college. That label? He lit it on fire, because to him, wisdom doesn't come with a degree, it comes with real-life experience. And Whoopi's elitist tone, her smug delivery, only made it worse. By now, the damage was done. This wasn't just a bad day for Whoopi, it was a total collapse of her usual media power. And the moment that sealed it all, Whoopi never responded. Not on air, not on social media, not through any PR team, nothing. No apology, no fight, no attempt to clear things up or explain what she really meant. Just dead silence. That silence hit harder than anything she could have said, because in this kind of media storm, staying quiet doesn't look like confidence, it looks like defeat. People started asking if she was backing down or just hoping it would all blow over. But with the internet, nothing ever just blows over. Not when every clip is getting millions of views and her face is plastered on every reaction video. What really shook people was how fast this all happened. One careless comment, 2 brutal responses, and now one of the most recognizable figures in media looked like she was crumbling. Not with a public meltdown, but with a slow, painful unraveling. A few awkward shifts in her tone, a weak attempt at an apology, and then nothing. That silence, it was louder than any rant she could have delivered. What was once a fortress of confidence started cracking from the inside. And when someone like Whoopi, who's built a career off being sharp, outspoken, and unshakable, starts to wobble, people notice. Because in today's media arena, hesitation is weakness. And weakness? That's when the audience and your enemies go in for the kill. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one.